Good evening, everyone. I watched this panel while I was cooking dinner. It was shake and bake and delicious. But I was very animated and talking to the screen the whole time, and I thought, oh my goodness, I can't wait to do my video tonight. Mr. Bernier weighs in, and listen to the ohs and the ums and the oh, Max, no, in the background when Maxime Bernier is talking about free speech. This is a Liberal MP and an NDP MP, Mr. Cullen is the NDP, and I can't remember the Liberals' name at this point in time, but it doesn't really matter. And just listen, yes, listen to the substance of what Mr. Bernier is saying, but listen to the vocal cues the other two are giving him to be quiet. And it happens multiple times throughout the interview. It's only 4 minutes long. We're going to listen to the initial interaction between Mr. Bernier and the host, and, well, we'll split it all up, but it's interesting and really, really scary. Absolutely no one is in favor of free speech except for Mr. Bernier. And whenever he brings it up, they're trying to shut him up. It's interesting. Here we go.
I want to move on quickly to this issue involving MP Michael Cooper, who was kicked off the Justice Committee for, among other things, quoting from the manifesto of the Christchurch, New Zealand alleged shooter. He wasn't kicked out of caucus.
I just want to break in. I want to make sure everybody understands the quote that Mr. Cooper said of the Christchurch shooter was simply that he aligns much more closely with communist China than he does with conservatives, because conservatives are just another arm of the corporatism that he despises. So he wasn't trying to incite hatred, Mr. Cooper wasn't, in sharing that part of the manifesto. That was the person's, the hate-filled Christchurch shooter's own words decrying and denouncing conservatism. So the way they're trying to spin this is that Mr. Cooper read into the record ideas that were spreading hate, and that is simply false.
Now we hear today that the Justice Committee is going to expunge the official record. You are a firm advocate of free speech. How do you feel about going back and changing the official record of words that have already been uttered?
I feel like we are in the novel 1984. Something happened yesterday, and today, because of political correctness in this country, we are erasing that. Nice. They are rewriting history doing that. So Michael didn't do anything wrong. He was expressing his point of view, and we need people like that in a parliament.
Can I just say we're all members of parliament?
It's too bad that the Conservatives are not here today, and they're not defending free speech. They're not defending the fundamental right in our Constitution, freedom of speech.
Indeed. Would you want him, if they get kicked out of the Conservative caucus, would you welcome him to?
It would be welcome our party, because we will campaign on freedom, yes, and free speech for sure.
Can I just say
are we not into kind of Winston Smith territory here? We're going back and changing the news retroactively.
No. Two things.
So it's unequivocal. Mr. Bernier says, yes, Mr. Cooper would be welcome in the People's Party, and free speech is important. And I think that the reaction of Mr. Cullen and how this gentleman is going to currently phrase his displeasure at what Max said is interesting. We're gonna keep watching this because it's interesting.
It's very important. We've all been members of committee. We prepare for these committee meetings. And, here's a member of a committee who looked up a manifesto of a mass murderer.
That's right.
In preparation for a committee hearing where a representative of the Muslim community was going to testify.
Well, he could have done it on the...
And the committee meeting was the Justice Committee hearing on online hate speech. Online hate speech. This manifesto was posted on Facebook. This person, Mr. Cooper, was doing his due diligence by looking up online hate posted online. What an insane way to try and smear this man. What insanity is this that we're witnessing in Canada? This is 1984 and the Ministry of Truth in action, gentlemen. It's incredibly, incredibly concerning. And that's in place of a long string of expletives. My goodness.
This was premeditated. This was premeditated, and I actually have to wonder, and my colleague Randy Boissonneau has, I think, eloquently put the case, that this member should not be part of the caucus of the official opposition of Canada. So that's very important. But on the point of no conservative on this panel, I just want to point out, Glenn, that every week with you and Don and others, You know, Nathan shows up, I show up. Sometimes issues help our party, sometimes they don't. But we show up and we explain it. And that there's no conservative tonight on this panel is nothing short of shameful.
But Dave, let me ask you this. Why not let the comments stand in the record so that people can go back now, in future, and go back and judge them for what they were said? This is the historical record of the highest level of debates in our country. Why should they not be preserved?
It's a shame what they did.
Allow me. We rarely get to witness true evil. What we saw in Christchurch was that. Part of the evil act is not just the despicable killing of innocents targeted for their faith. Assembling in faith.
I don't question that.
Allow me this. Hold on, Max.
I question the freedom of speech.
Hold on. I didn't interrupt you. Now, one of the ambitions of these people who do these acts is to have their words immortalized, their sick view of the world put into places like parliamentary record. For Mr. Cooper to have done this and to perhaps have planned it is to suggest that we will continue and further the conversation.
We still
that somebody, but so allow
still
this.
have copies of Mein Kampf in libraries. So people can go back and look at these things.
So we have freedom of speech in this country. We also.
I just want to point out, he was trying to make the case. It's egregious to even talk about it. It's terrible. And these two were both agreeing, oh, yes, awful, awful, awful. Until the host says, wait a second, like, we've got Mein Kampf. You can go buy that in a bookstore. Oh, we've got freedom of speech up until. And they have expunged this. Legally, Mr. Cooper never said anything. This is an incredible, unprecedented crackdown on freedom of speech. And these two are making it sound like the government's just protecting you. It's much better that they did this, and instead of listening at the Justice Committee hearing for online hate, hearing about potentially online hate. Yeah. Isn't it incredible? You'd think that they would want to do that. Holy goodness.
So we also have limitations on speech that you can't do, which is to incite hatred towards
want to limit what you don't
Max,
like to
let
hear.
me finish my sentence. We also have limitations on speech which say you can't use speech to incite hatred and violence against particular groups. We also say that there is speech with consequence. What Mr. Cooper did had consequence. We are not free of consequence in Parliament as elected people, and I think it was appropriate to expunge the record from this.
One sentence, Mr. Brunet.
Freedom of speech are the most important fundamental rights. And what Michael said, maybe you don't like what he was saying, but that's part of freedom. If you want to debate, you need to be able to listen to another part. And he was saying what he believed in, and I think he didn't do anything wrong.
Interesting topic. Thank you all.
That body language speaks volumes. The way these two
Freedom of speech
were reacting the whole time, really, and even vocally, right? Mr. Bernier was interrupted, and again, I can't remember, by him at the beginning, and whatever about the interruption. I think the fundamental thing here is context matters. The Justice Committee hearing was about online hate, and what was read into record was posted online on Facebook and scrubbed, and that should be part of the record. It happened. It shouldn't be legally disappeared because somebody doesn't like what they heard. That's all that happened here. And it's very, very concerning. It's a slippery slope, and we're sliding, and there's nobody up there to catch us because we've poked the United States in the eye. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But the only person standing up, despite what everybody else does and says, and saying freedom of speech is the cornerstone of what Canada, in our view, is. And it's important to defend. And that person is Maxime Bernier. So check out the People's Party of Canada.ca. Check out Maxime Bernier and our platform. And man, at this point, it matters. It matters. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.